Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hey, Martin, how you doing?
Hey Matt, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're at the end of winter here. It's one last gasp here in the Northeast. That's why I'm wearing a jacket. It's a little chilly today, but we were wearing shorts and t-shirt a couple days ago. How you doing?
Same here. I just returned from London. I've been to the photography and video show, and we had great weather in London too. And yeah, I just came back, and summer is not far away, I would say. So the weather is
Fantastic.
definitely going to be nicer soon.
Awesome. Well, welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending. As usual, let us know where you're tuning in from in the chat. We'd love to hear that. Also, if you have questions, please use the Q&A tab. If you accidentally put something in chat, we'll convert it to Q&A.
Mhm.
Today, we have an expanded version of a presentation we've done before, just a little bit more information and a little bit of updates in it. And this is why use a flat field lens for macro and repro photography. It's a great topic, and we have a lot of information to cover. Martin, do you want to add anything before we jump right in?
No, it's an interesting topic, and we got after we did this the last time, I think somewhere mid last year, we got lots of replies to that
Oh, yeah.
webinar, and a lot of interesting questions right after the webinar, and even underneath the YouTube replay. So we decided to do it a second time and just bring in some more information, as you just mentioned.
That's right.
So should we just jump right into it?
Let's do it.
Okay,
Here we are.
awesome.
All right, so I'm going to kick it off.
Yeah, please.
Martin and I, Martin and I developed this together, so we're both going to be presenting, but I'll be starting. Um, let's just talk about the difference between a macro lens versus a flat field macro lens. Um, the flat field macro lens has flatter front elements. Why does that matter? Well, it ends up having less of a curved field. It has better edge to edge sharpness, and we'll connect the dots here, but this makes a big difference when you're focus stacking. It has even illumination in that it doesn't have a lot of fall off or no fall off from center to corner. It also has very little to no distortion, so there's less stretching of your subject. And when you shoot it wide open, meaning it at the fastest aperture, it's sharper edge to edge. And if you stop down 2 to 3 stops from the maximum aperture, the widest aperture, it'll be a very flat field and evenly lit with no distortion or vignetting. So that's a good rule of thumb. Stop down 2 to 3 stops from the maximum aperture with these lenses. And these lenses came from making art reproduction and also darkroom and larger lenses. So what do those subjects have in common? Well, both of them are flat. Most paintings are flat. We're not talking about sculpture here, right? Most paintings and photographs and drawings are flat. And also, negatives are flat. And so are the paper that people would print them onto. And, chromes were flat. So, or at least if you use the right carriers, they were flat. So what you want to do is try and render those things as faithfully as possible. So the designs for these lenses came from those two practices, art repro and larger lenses. You could see in the diagram on the right, a flat field lens, if you have a flat field passing through, it's going to try and render it as flat. And then on the right hand side, if you have a curved field, you're going to have just part of it in focus, and we're going to talk about that. So the irksome part about this is we've already invested in lenses, right? Most of us got lenses that we thought were the best for the job that we had at hand. So let's talk about our standard zoom and prime lenses. No matter what you think about them, they all have some sort of curvature to the field of focus. Meaning it's not a perfectly, like if you held up a piece of paper with really small typography on it and you tried to photograph that, you would notice that some of it's in focus wherever your focus point was, and other parts sort of drift out of focus. That's a curved field of focus. If you use a standard zoom or prime lens for macro work, it can make it harder or almost impossible to focus stack those images because some things happen. There's chromatic aberrations, which we're going to show you what that looks like, and that curvature, that field distortion, which it's going to cause inconsistent focus planes across the images. And when you try to stack them together, the sort of the bending of those objects that aren't dead center makes it really hard for the focus stacking software to render into a faithful focus stack. So how can you tell if your lens is a flat field? Well, grab some newsprint, grab some currency, graph paper, anything with regular crisp detail and a consistent background to identify it. And you want to lay it as flat as you can if you have magnets to stretch it and flatten it, right? And then try your best to set up your camera so that it's perpendicular to this. That will help a lot. And take a photograph, focus as best as you can. And then you're going to look for distortion or vignetting and the sharpness from the center to the edges and the corners. If you don't see those qualities, then you might be seeing some shortcomings of your lens, specifically for the process of trying to do flat field work. And flat field work can be about focus stacking, or it could be about repro. Those are two of the main things that you would do with it. But this is a good way to test your lens. So here's a great example. This was just a photograph of some map that I had. And you'll see that on the left-hand side, it's starting to drift off. And I'm going to do a little drawing here. It's starting to drift off from focus this way. Oh, look at that. That's the wrong color. So I'm going to change the color here to pink so everybody can see it. It's sharp here where I put the X, but it's drifting off into soft focus there. And that's just an aberration of the lens. And it starts to happen, around in here, but everything here is the center of the lens, and that's in focus. So that was, I believe, a 50 millimeter f1.4 lens.
Hey Matt, can I add
Yeah,
something? I think
please.
it's most interesting to note that the effect that you just mentioned, the sharpness fall off towards the edges of the frame, is most apparent if you use any kind of camera native macro lens and combine it with any kind of extension, be it extension tubes
Mm-hmm.
or bellows.
Yeah.
So if you introduce any kind of extension into this system, you will notice what Matt just described: a little sharpness fall off towards the edges of the frame. And this is apparent to those setups. It is not an error in the lens design or in our bellows. It just happens. It's interesting and it's interesting to note.
Let
Yep.
me take what Martin said and put it in the echo chamber and send it back out a little bit.
Sure.
Macro lens, actually, all lens designers, I think, are gifts to humanity. Like everything that they do, the optical designers, we appreciate you so much. You take a certain set of parameters and say, this is the task that I need to bend, refract light to. And I'm going to try
Correct.
my best to reduce all of the errors caused by refracting light. And a macro lens is a very specialized lens, and it's made to work within certain tolerances. And that's usually from the flange where the lens mounts to the camera
Mhm.
body to the front of that lens. And when you move it away from that, it's out of spec. It's out of the job that it was given. And although it's a macro lens, and although extension tubes exist as if it were a Bellows camera, you're pretending it's a Bellows camera, right? That doesn't
Right.
mean that the lens is working within its sweet spot. You've taken it out of its sweet spot and you're asking it to do something it's not good at. So you're going to get the chromatic aberration. You're going to get the sharpness fall off, and other things that are not advantageous. So
So it works best when attached to a camera direct. in other words.
It does,
To
exactly.
make
So
a
macro
long story
lenses,
short, yeah.
yeah, are best at that. And that's why we're talking about flat field lenses, because they excel at this task of being moved to greater magnification ratios.
Correct.
Thank you, Martin. That was a great ad. So the lens that we're talking about is in a class of corrected lenses called apochromatic. What this does is it corrects the separation of the chroma, the colors, which happens as light is refracted. It uses different kinds of glass and different coatings to make sure that when those colors separate, that they get brought back together at the same plane of focus. So it's a fancy way of saying like the color fringing, right? It's something that's disadvantageous, and it makes it really hard to stack the images, to focus stack them, and it looks like an error, which distracts people, which doesn't help. So where does chromatic aberration happen? Usually at areas of high contrast, where sharp transitions from light to dark, you'll start to see the colors start to fringe or separate there. You'll also see a loss of sharpness and some spherical aberration happening there. So this is just a closer look. On the left-hand side, you'll see the red, green, and blue separating, and they're different planes of focus. And on the right-hand frame, they've all been corrected to hit the same plane of focus. So what's it look like? So this is a 50-1.4 lens. You can see that this is a very narrow field of focus. It's somewhere in here that is focused, and it also ends up being over here, right? But you'll start to see that like the colors start to separate out here. And you'll see that in the sharp transition areas, that it's not like a perfect transition. You'll start to see some colors start to show up there. And here's an even better example of it happening. Take a look at what happens here. You'll see that there's blue and green and red separately happening. They should be in the same spot, but they got split out. So essentially you're taking three different wavelengths and having them hit three different planes of focus, which is colors in different places and sharpness in different places, which wreaks havoc when you're trying to stack these things. So the answer to this is using an apochromatic lens, and also one that is flat field. So I'm going to hand it over to Martin here to talk about the Flex Pyrite 90mm f4.5 Apo lens.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So the Pirate lens by Schneider Kreuznach that we're talking about today is a 90mm flat field lens, as Matt just mentioned, and it is available in two different models from us. So we mount it for both our universal Bellows systems. The Flex Pirate lens system is mounted for the use on our Bell F bellows, which is also the base for any of our auto bellows kits that we offer. And it comes ready with a lens hood and the necessary lens board, of course. The lens aperture is from f4.5 to 64, and it enables on the Bell F bellows focus from infinity to macro to 1:1. So if you want to reproduce at the magnification ratio 1:1, if you want to do slide copying, this is the perfect lens. This is the perfect lens for you. And if we go one slide further, there's the PRO-PYRITE 90mm. It's essentially the same lens, but mounted on a different lens board. This lens has a very huge image circle, so it cannot only be used on 35mm full frame cameras, but it is also ready to be used on medium format cameras. Its image circle is 90 centimeters across, so it could theoretically even be used on sensors greater than a GFX sensor or a Hasselblad sensor in a digital bag. So if we jump one slide further, there is a technical drawing that our friends at Schneider Kreuznach thankfully provided. So for all of you who are introduced or interested in the technical aspects of the lens, such as filter thread lengths, such as the lockable aperture ring, wait for the replay to be sent out later. So for all of you who need magnifications that exceed 1:1, who want to go beyond 1:1, this is also possible with a 90mm lens. Of course, it requires some added extension. This can, on one hand, be done by combining two of either the Bell F or Bell Pro bellows. Or it can also be achieved by, I switched the camera here, by using extension tubes, which can be used on their own, or they can be used on any Bell Pro series bellows. These are the Bell Pro 1 and the Bell Pro TS bellows. So let me switch the camera back here. Oops, there's the presentation. So, Matt, would you like to take over again after we've spoken about the technical aspects of the lens?
Yeah, sure. So if you were asking yourself, well, hey, Matt, Martin, I already have a macro lens. Why should I consider this? Well, I think we've made some arguments already that you'll resonate with, but to recap some of them, a flat field lens is optimized specifically for flat field repro. So if you want to shoot negatives or slides, or if you want to do macro focus stacking, it will outperform a standard macro lens. If you are reaching for greater quality, if you have experienced some of these really irksome aberrations and you said, I know it can look better than what I've been doing, you should probably consider getting the 90mm focal length lens. And the bellows. It would be really wonderful to work with.
Let me add one aspect. There's several standard macro lenses out there who aren't even capable of reaching 1:1. They only reach 1:2. So if you require 1:1, which is essential for slide copying, you need a lens that can reach 1:1.
Truth.
Yeah.
And also, some of these macro lenses have shorter focal lengths, and the distance in between the subject and the front objective of the lens is so small, it makes artfully lighting it nearly impossible or just very difficult. That's one of the things. You have a small filter thread on this also, which, when you're adding filtration would be, a variable neutral density or neutral density itself, which some people might want to do, or polarization, which is common. It just costs a little bit less to do that. And also the aperture adjustments are, if you've ever used a view camera, they're easily accessible right there on the lens. And you can also, you can loosen up the locking knobs and turn the lens to face whatever direction you need it to based on your camera's orientation, which when you're doing repro work or macro work could be in many different directions.
Let me add one aspect here. So the aperture ring doesn't click, as most of you are used from using manual lenses these days. So it rotates freely. You have to set your working aperture. And then there's a little knob on the aperture ring, which aids in locking down the current preset aperture.
Awesome. That's great. The lens, I mean, we could both talk about this.
Sure.
I'll just kick it off. It's pretty simple. When you buy a dedicated lens, it's dedicated to that body. And sometimes, like that lens mount might change. Like there might be a leap forward in technology, like let's say Nikon F to Nikon Z, for instance, what I shoot. If you invest in this, you're future-proofing your system. You can put this lens and bellows on any camera body And you can see a comprehensive list here.
Exactly, and adding to that, it just requires a swap of a simple adapter. And if you're one of the happy owners of one of our auto bellows kits that we sell, all of these auto bellows kits are based on the Bell F bellows. If you want to invest in the flat field lens too, all you have to do is just detach the lens mount of your auto bellows, let it hang sideways, and attach the 90mm flex pirate lens. It's as easy as that because the camera mount is already there.
Great point.
I know you did it several times like this.
Oh yeah,
letting hang the lens mount on the side of the bellows and repurpose the camera mount of the auto bellows system.
Yeah, it's really simple. If you already have the correct connection, you don't
Correct.
need to get the other simpler connection.
Yeah. Right.
Yep. The Pro series bellows are also compatible. I'm going to let Martin talk about this.
Yeah. Same here. The same is true that we already said and mentioned for the Bell F bellows, with one important aspect that differs. The Pro bellows is not only compatible with MFT or APS-C or 35mm full frame cameras, but will also accept a Fujifilm GFX. It will also accept Phase 1 IQ3 and IQ4 backs, which feature bigger sensors. And the 90mm Pirate lens has this huge image circle, which will totally cover these bigger sensors too. So if you own one of these bigger sensor cameras, or if you plan to use a tilt and shift, or if you want to introduce it into your job, into your workflow, then invest in one of our Pro series bellows, and the 90mm Pirate gets you covered, right?
Absolutely. Yep. We have gotten these questions before, and we're going to get out ahead of them. Can you use this for anything else than repro and macro? The answer is unconditionally yes. It's excellent for many tasks outside of the studio and photographic tasks like this. This is an image from our friend Robert Thompson in Ireland, using it out in the field. And he made a really lovely single shot with the 90mm here. Actually, I don't know. He may have focus stacked this. He does that often. So, Martin, you want to add anything to this?
I don't think that this particular image is focus stacked. There's one image on the next slides where he's using a Castle M rail underneath, which may be focus stacked. So I think he just stopped down a little further in this image. But we can ask Robert if he sees this, if he sees the replay, maybe he can add some comments to his image into the comment section, to the chat box.
It's an incredible image, though. The out of focus area from this 90mm lens is really pleasing to me.
Yeah, I agree. Same here. A moss.
And this is using Pro bellows.
This is using Pro bellows. Backwards. He attached the camera to the front standard and the lens to the rear standard, because both sides accept the same adapter rings. That's possible too.
Awesome. That must have made it shorter on the front so he could disturb them off less. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, this guy. So I took these pictures in Denmark, and I had the bellows and the 90mm with me, and I found that it was. I grew up. I went straight from 35mm to large format. So working with the bellows is sort of second nature to me, and it felt really natural to pull them out and make some images with them. And it was it just felt great, and I loved the sharpness and contrast and clarity from this lens. So it does a lot.
which bellows did you use, by the way, to take these images? The Bell F?
Yep, the Bell F.
Supposedly, because you were traveling.
I did. No, I definitely had that. I had,
Smaller, more compact.
yep, yep. I had the Bell F, and I had a focusing rail with me. That's the one.
That's definitely focus stacked. You can see
Yes.
he's using the Castle underneath his Nikon Z and the Belpro bellows.
Slime mold. That's amazing. He'll correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what it looks like to me. And if you didn't get it, if you've never been to one of our webinars before, you might never have heard us say this, but guess what? It's part of a system. NOVOFLEX builds everything so that it is a component that can be used with many, many other things. So if you own other NOVOFLEX items, this is compatible. The Bell F and the Bell Pro base are also ARCA compatible, and they have a 1/4 and 3/8 thread mounts on them. And then you can add focusing rails like the Cross Q, the QP, the XQ2, or the Mini 2, or the M, or the Micro.
Because all of them are ARCA compatible, so it's swapping gear as the application dictates.
Yep. So it's your everything here is future proof because everything's compatible, and you add to your system one piece at a time, and suddenly your capabilities just expand.
Correct.
Ooh, would you like to do a demo, Martin?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Why not? I've created a little setup here. Let me switch the camera. I hope you guys can see what I've built up.
We can.
We spoke so much about the lens. So the lens, as mentioned earlier, is available in models for the Bell Pro bellows and the Bell F bellows. And here on my little trusty focus rail, I've added a contraption that is a little unusual. I don't want to start with the bellows because we have several of our users and asking us for a fixed setup that can only do one-to-one. This is particularly interesting for people in museums and archives. They don't want to do anything else than one-to-one. And by combining several extension tubes, which on their own can also be used to further extend any Belpro bellows, and adding the appropriate Belpro adapters and the 90mm on a flat lens board, we have the perfect setup for creating magnifications of your flat originals of one-to-one. I've added a little ruler here, and you'll notice that that we're almost at one-to-one. Yeah, 36mm across. So for people in this field who only require one-to-one and nothing else, this setup is perfect. And if we just take this off here, it's let me just remove the camera and switch the camera again. We can just detach our camera here from the rail. Attach it onto the Belpro bellows. I hope you can see this.
We can.
Yeah, this is the correct adapter. So it's quite easy. So this is the Pyrite lens mounted for Belpro use on a recessed lens board. I attach the lens hood. I insert it into the bellows, and I just directly attach it to my focus rail again. bring in the HDMI cable again. And now I can bring this up a little. And now we have a tool for all the people who do not just want to do one-to-one, but bigger subject fields.
So you're changing the distance between the front and rear standards now, right?
I'm changing the distance between the front and rear standards to achieve different magnification factors. But of course, if I go back on my focus rail, oops, and let me just switch this again.
Now we can see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Extending the bellows. Yeah.
And if I'm extending the bellows again, I will also be able to do one-to-one. If the bellows is fully closed, I will be able to reach infinity focus. So I could even use this to do landscape shots. But with the bellows, of course, I have way more flexibilities than with the fixed setup that I showed earlier. But for anybody who is interested in having a setup with a flat field lens that only does one-to-one, because they only need one-to-one, let us know in the comments. We'll be able to let you know what parts are needed to achieve this. Tool.
Martin, you can get infinity focus because of the recessed lens board, correct?
Correct. It's not possible with the flat lens board. Let me show you the flat lens board. There's a flat lens board available. See? This is the flat lens board, and the flat lens board is required if I work with the tubes and only one-to-one and nothing else.
Got it.
And the same that we show here with the Pro bellows is, of course, true for the F bellows. Infinity and one-to-one magnification can be achieved with the smaller bellows as well.
Awesome. That's
okay.
Great.
There's nothing complex about this. It's wonderful and easy to work with. Since all of the parts are ARCA compatible, as you just saw, I just attached the bellows onto the rail, onto the ARCA compatible coupling. It's easy. All of the adapters and the lens itself have a V-groove, so I simply enter them, adjust the two locking screws, and they're added to the bellows.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Do we have any questions, Matt?
We don't have any questions yet, but we'll solicit them again.
Yeah.
We've thrown a little bit of information at you. We want to know if that has caused sparks or fireworks in your brain. Do you have questions about how things fit, what pieces might be needed, or techniques? Please let us know here in the Q&A during the live presentation. If you're watching this on the replay, please use the chat or the comment section there, and we will check in every once in a while and find your questions and answer them. But for the people that are here live, we want to answer your questions. My biggest question when I first got into this was, why is this lens so sharp?
It is tech sharp, by the way. We use it for most of our product images, and we need to make sure to have them properly cleaned beforehand.
I borrowed the lens at first, and then I really didn't want to give it back because I thought that I was getting good. I thought I was getting good results out of my macro lenses when I was using a Bellows.
Right.
But this is some things that I really couldn't put my finger on about what it was falling short on until I saw the results from this lens. And then I was like, well, this is the solution, period. End of sentence. Yeah. So it made me really happy. We have a request, not necessarily a message or a question. Lawrence asked if we could compare and contrast this lens with the Nikon 60mm 2.8 and the 105 2.8. Lawrence, are you talking about the classic F mount, the micro Nikkors, or are we talking about the Z lenses? That's what I want to know. So, But Martin, how would you feel about the? There we go. And Robert wants to know about that. So the Nikon Z MC105 2.8S. So I'm going to go out on a limb here. I know that Martin, you've probably done your own testing. So Lawrence was asking about the F mounts. As we said before, beyond a certain magnification, the design for magnification for a lens, when you go beyond that, when you move it further away from the lens flange mount, you'll start to observe that increasing aberration, such as chromatic aberration.
Right.
So that's probably what's going to happen. Is that what you've observed when you've used the 60 millimeter?
Exactly. That's exactly. I wouldn't call it a problem, but that's exactly what we observed when we did our initial tests here.
Mm-hmm.
And even if we use the 90 millimeter at greater magnification, it becomes more apparent that we see a sharpness fall off, even with the 60 mil lens. Even though it's a great lens when used on a camera, on a Nikon camera direct, but
Yep.
at higher magnification, the problem that we highlighted in the earlier slides becomes even more apparent.
Yep. And Roger, if you own the 105 macro lens for the Nikon Z version and you borrow or purchase the Bellows, you can put that macro lens on there and make some photographs yourself and see what the results are. If you start to observe the aberrations that we've demonstrated here, you'll see that it's just outside of the scope of the lens. So it's quite possible that's going to happen. We've seen it happen, but the best way to do it is to test it yourself. When although Martin and team have tested a lot of lenses, it's not their job to test them all, but they have seen this happen consistently, so that they can affirm
Right.
that this is the way that it is. It's just science.
I agree. Yeah, exactly. How about if you invert the lens? So inverting or using the lens in reverse for, in particular, the 105 macro lens doesn't do anything in terms of magnification. So
Hmm.
there is no greater magnification than 1:1. And theoretically, yes, it will bring up the quality a little bit when you use a lens in reverse, but the sharpness fall off towards the edges of the frame remain. Yeah.
Hmm. Good points. So Roger does own it. That's good. So Roger, if you have access to the Bellows or you own the Bellows, then I'd suggest throwing it on and trying your own reproduction ratio tests to see where it becomes intolerable, the aberrations. And if it's intolerable from the get-go, as soon as you put it on a Bellows, then you might consider the flat-filled pyrite lens. All right. Thank you. That was a really good set of questions coming in there from everybody who's attending and had some curiosities.
Thank you very much.
If you have any other questions, just hit reply to the email you got from the invitation, and we'll reply to you, or leave a comment on the YouTube video when we post it. We'd be happy to get back to you and help you with explore any of those questions. We appreciate everyone tuning in today. Thank you for being a part of our educational series. We're happy to talk about gear. We're happy to talk about techniques. And we'll be announcing next month's webinar soon. I'll be talking about Milky Way panoramic photography. Shh, don't tell anybody. So
looking forward to that. Well,
yeah,
let me just add to that. Thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your curiosity.
We look forward to seeing you at the next topic that we're going to be discussing. Thank you, Martin. Thanks for doing this, and thanks to everybody else out there. We're gonna end this now, but we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thanks for your time, and good night from Germany.
And good day from America. See you soon, everybody.
Bye.